Hey everyone, welcome back to Rebuild the Construction Mindset podcast. I'm Kelley and I have Jenna next to me. If you are new, please subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Odyssey. If you're coming back for another one, thank you. Thank you for being here and give us a good review and follow us. Jenna, I'll hand it over to you to welcome today's interview.
Thank you. So today with us, we have Jack Lackey. He is an owner of Associated Building Specialties, and he's been in the industry for a while now. It sounds like he's got a lot of experiences, and he's very passionate about finding problems rather than finding the silver lining, which I love that. I think that's kind of aligns with what we're wanting to do with our podcast here. And we think he meshes well with our vision here at Rebuilding the Construction Mindset. So Jack, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us how long you've been in the industry, kind of what got you into the industry, and just kind of carry on from there.
Sure. It's great to be here. I have to say I love what you two are doing. It's long overdue, and I hope you have crazy, wild success. I'm happy to help out. I'm in my 4th decade of commercial construction. I like to joke that I got my start being yanked out of bed at 7 a.m. on Saturdays to go help my dad on residential projects. He got his start doing central vacuum systems, intercom systems, back when those were a thing. And I was cheap, free labor. But I'm proud of that, right? It's what got me my work ethic. But I grew up in the business. My dad started ABS. He retired, 22 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I've been working here officially for 35 years, if my memory isn't failing me, but been the majority owner and in the driver's seat since early 2000s. Been fortunate enough to grow and have promoted a CEO to run the day-to-day here, which allows me time to be more creative and focus on the fun projects of running a company and trying to build it.
Very nice. So when did you decide, did you get into construction because your dad started the business, or were you like, I love this, I want to do this for the rest of my life?
I would say it's the former. I got into it because my dad started the company.
Okay.
I went to a countertop fabricator for a couple of years. That was my only other real job in my career. Did that for a couple of years, and then he enticed me back to come work at the company, and did that. We were very, very small back in the day, so wearing a lot of hats. I give a Jack talk to new hires when they join the company, and I'm fond of saying that I'm a jack of all trades, literally. And I like to say it's not to impress you, but to impress upon you that I've done most of the jobs in the company. And so I understand what you're going through and what we're asking you to do. I'm someone who doesn't think a manager or an owner should ask someone to do something they haven't or wouldn't do themselves.
Yeah, I think we hit on that stuff when we met one-on-one before, not one-on-one, met before we had this interview with you, is that you were very, very involved with who your people are here, mm-hmm. and what's going on with them and how you run the business. I think that was hit home for Jenna and I, that you care about the people and you want the best for your people out there in the office and also in the field. And just FYI, we are in his office today and we get to see how awesome his office is. And it's very nice, mm-hmm. from a couple little things, just little things already seen just from walking in the door.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's nice.
And it's only 20 minutes from my house, so more.
I think I'm like 15, 20 minutes.
Awesome. So I know we kind of talked about a few different topics, and there was 3 that specifically kind of enticed Kelley and I and our curiosity of like your your views on them. So the first one was unrealistic deadlines. Can you share an example of a project where unrealistic deadlines were set and how you address them, like with a general contractor?
So we're a finish subcontractor. We're in the last 10 to 20% of the schedule.
Yeah.
And really the deadlines for us, the window of opportunity always tends to shrink, but the finish line never tends to move. And so being a finish contractor, we end up being the bad guy, right? It's frustrating that all the other trades have opportunities for delays, whatever would cause the scheduled slide. I do think they're over aggressive by and large to start with. But just being a finish contractor, we are always squeezed, trying to appease the contractor, deliver well, finish well, right? It's what we're in business to do, but it is a struggle.
Yeah. Finish contractors always end up on the critical path, some way, shape, or form. It always ends up that way. So I understand that for sure.
Yeah.
You said I think you said something about feeling like you're the bad guy.
Yes.
Can you elaborate more on like that feeling of why you feel that way, or people that are making you feel that way? It's like, where is that coming from? Is it the GC saying, hurry up, get done? Is it because now you're finding mistakes from trades before? Like, where do you think that's coming from?
We pride ourselves on taking contracts based on the schedules as best we know them when we propose the project, when it's awarded. If there's a buyout process, we really look at our backlog and our manpower capabilities. And I'm just going to say in the last 5 to 10 years, it's been almost useless to try to do that long-term planning.
Wow.
Because the schedules just simply slide that long. We're on a job in Montana right now that's pretty substantial. We were supposed to be done last fall, and we are about halfway done now, the end of March as we record this. That's a 10-hour commute for our trucks and our material where we're working. Trying to plan around that and plan manpower is really a struggle. But the GC has a commitment to their ownership to deliver the project at an agreed date. Whether that date's realistic or not is another conversation. But we end up being the bad guys because what we do holds up inspections, TCOs, COs. And that's what we hear all the time. You're going to hold up our inspection. You're holding up our inspection. And really, if we walk it back and we look at the schedule we agreed to in the contract and all the iterations along the way, we really don't own it, right? Yeah. We do our very best to track those schedules, make sure we can take whatever critical measurements are required, get long lead items ordered. We have a 44,000 square foot warehouse just so we can bring materials in months early. We don't want to be late because of material issues. And yet we still end up being what I would say is the bad guy because manpower stacks up, right? Jobs stack up, trades stack. We can't be as efficient in the field. It's a variety of issues getting to the finish line and finishing well.
Yeah. You said the last 10 to 20 years, you feel like that has changed where you can't plan as well.
Yeah, I would say 5 to 10.
Or 5 to 10. Yeah. Is that what you said? Sorry. What do you think's changed in the industry that makes those deadlines have just become worse?
I'm not on the GC side, right? So I can't, I can't speak to it, but I have colleagues and good friends who are GCs, and I hear them comment about the sales process from their perspective. And, it's kind of like name that tune, right? I can name that tune in 4 notes. Well, I can name that tune in 3 notes. Yeah. Right? Going back to the 70s, if you're that old. And
that's a show that's back on now.
Is it?
It is. Yeah, they do have that back on.
I'll have to check that out. But I can deliver that project in 20 months. Yep. Now I can do it in 19. I can do it in 18, right? And time is money. And I think there's some overzealous GCs, whether it's trying to close a sale and build backlog or trying to get that particular project on their resume, or for whatever reason. I don't think enough people are involved in the planning, and being a specialty contractor, we're 1 to 1.5% of the building budget, we're not invited to the table in the design stage, pre-bid. We don't even get questions answered prior to bid day in the form of addenda, right? We're not important until we are.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Which is toward the end of the project.
That's super unfortunate because of what you're saying. You're dealing with so much. We should be bringing you in earlier. We should be talking to you earlier.
There are some areas, right? I'm not going to drive the whole construction schedule. We know our place on the totem pole. We know our piece of the puzzle, so to speak. But we're overlooked, right? There are some really critical items that we handle as a company that impact others, and others impact us. And it's really easy for superintendents and project managers to overlook that, even when they've been at it for years and years.
Yeah.
We tend to be an afterthought. We do our best, right? We ask the questions, but we also understand that mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, all of those are the ones that are important pre-bid.
Yeah. But those are also the ones that get the most time, right? Because since they're at the beginning of the project, if, they have delays, it doesn't really, they calculate it out and plug it into the schedule and try to figure out, what that ends up looking like at the end of the day. But they don't fully panic the way they do when finished trades are late, right? Because it's like if the structural or the mechanical guy's late, or something shows up late to the job site, he still has until the end of the project or whatever, right, to like mitigate and to get it right. But they don't throw OT and that kind of stuff as much, I feel like, at those trades than they do at the finished trades, right? The finished trades are the ones who are working overtime and trying to catch up. I'm not saying that they don't always do that, but they don't I feel like they're not as proactive essentially with it, right? It's like if we try to get the steel guys and working quicker and to meet their schedule, then the rest of us can kind of flow versus, well, if that pushes and this pushes and this pushes and this pushes, and then we're stacked, right? And somehow we end up footing the bill for it, which is unfortunate.
Do you guys both, you think you definitely work way more overtime than probably the other trades?
I would say that finished trades, drywall, MEP probably too, right? Because they have finished things that they're doing.
When you're talking about the finish.
I would say unless, structural, if there was something super dire with the structural, but I'm on a project with like tilt-up panels, and the tilt-up panel portion of the project is what pushed the rest of the project out. They might have been working overtime, but it wasn't enough to get us back on schedule, right? So.
And now you guys are at the end of it, having to deal with it.
Now
we're saying, hey, we have TCO inspection coming. You need to hurry up and get this done. I don't care. Do what you need to do. Yeah.
When you have finished trades, like small, minuscule things, finished trades on the critical path, that's a problem. That's when like you're at your wit's end, and
at that point, it's almost too late, right?
Agreed.
There's nothing you can really do. I mean, that probably is the other frustrating point, right, Jack? At this point, how much can you do as an owner, as your PMs? Like, how much can they do to even like push back?
That's the rub, right? I feel like this part of the conversation is the complaining part rather than the solution finding. I feel like memories are short when we get to the end of the job, right? All the other trades had the opportunity or the contribution to the schedule slides, and the finish line hasn't materially changed, right, or pushed out for us. And so eyes are on us as finished trades. What are you going to do? What can you do? I need you, right? You need to look at your contract, right? You will adjust your manpower according to our schedule changes, right? And it's in there. It's true. But we spend a lot of time being upfront with our customers, pre-bid day, post-bid day, when we are in a buyout meeting, what this project looks like. How many mobilizations do we have included? What constitutes a mobilization, right? Because for us, it's not as clean, right? It's not like tooling in and tooling out. It's materials, right? It's different phasing. What overtime looks like, right? We don't have blank checks for overtime as subs. You know that. You would think that that's something that's easily understood, but it's not, right? At the end of the day, the GC wants their job done on a particular date. Now, some are understanding, right? Some acknowledge the schedule slides, and there's contingencies for overtime. God help us if we make a mistake and cause a delay, but we will own it immediately. Yeah. We will do whatever it takes to rectify a problem that we cause. But by and large, the schedules get compressed beyond our control.
Yeah. How does that affect your people? I mean, when we're talking about, there's consequences, obviously, of it financially. But what about your people? I mean, I'm sure that's got to be very stressful on a day-to-day basis.
It is incredibly stressful, and it is the one of many, I would say, but it's probably the biggest thing that bothers me about this industry is how cruel it can be. Not necessarily people, which can be cruel themselves, but just the ongoing, never-ending pressure to perform and provide manpower. It takes a toll, and it's not fair. I'm the OG, right? I've been doing this. I'm in my 4th decade now. I lay my head down at night and I go to sleep just fine. I know the world is not going to stop spinning if we don't show up on a job site tomorrow because we've double booked and that other job slid and we have to say, sorry, we'll get there as soon as we can. But I'm not the one receiving the calls from the PM and the super and the PE, sometimes literally screaming at my staff because we're not on site. And it's our job as managers and owners to talk that through, right? It's not your burden to carry, right? Yeah. Let's talk about coping techniques. Let's talk about stress management. Let's look in the mirror and determine what we own. What could we learn from this process? If we contributed to it, how can we avoid it in the future? But by and large, this is not a stress that I want my employees to carry home. And I know that they do.
Well, and that being said, I mean, I'm sure your craft feels it just as much as your PM teams do, right? Like, they're the ones out there installing and doing all of the labor portion of it and having to work the overtime and having to, deal with all that. How do you as a manager kind of help them? Because at the end of the day, you still have to get the work done. How do you manage between them not getting burned out and still making your customer happy?
That's a great question. I wish I could pull out a training manual and point to the paragraph where we cover that, but it doesn't exist. Yeah. It really is just recognizing the situation that you're in. What can you control and what can you not control? And which parts of those can you let go, right? If you have no control over it, and the analogy I like to use is this going to matter in a year? This issue today, is it going to matter in a year? Because if not, I don't want it to ruin your day. I don't want it to ruin your week. I don't want it to cause you to leave the company because of this ongoing stress, right? And what that means practically is we will go to the job site, right? We're getting yelled at. We're getting 72-hour demands. We'll go to the job again and walk it and point out, not to just the superintendent and our client, but our own staff. Here's why they're not ready, right? We could start, we could mobilize, but for us to send a crew and go into every room and do half the work because it's not ready for everything we do is incredibly wasteful. And our duration on the job site is going to be double or even triple. So we're not going to start, right? And that's difficult for a younger PE or PM to communicate to an older, highly regarded GC, right? Whether it's the employee or the company, that we have to protect our interests. We have to protect our manpower, our schedule, our profitability. And just because you want to see progress in any form doesn't mean that it's the right progress.
Yeah.
And so pointing out those scenarios and trying to train to that mindset, again, control what you can and let go of what you can't.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of that, what I think of is how many times you have to do that, though, because it's like you're retraining that new person on a new job site every time. Not within your company, but every new job site you're on, new client you're working with, you're almost potentially having that walk multiple times that job, multiple times, multiple projects. There's a time that it's just tiring in general to have to keep saying that same story and it not improving. That we are not, as an industry, going, this is a problem. We need to, because I remember that just from my previous life of go in there and do this one portion of the room, and you're like, but it's not ready. Well, visually it'll look good, but financially it doesn't look good for me. Mm-hmm. And then you're gonna get mad at me because I'm gonna send you a change order. So It's when do we finally say no? Stop doing this. I know that's probably a bigger, harder question to go into, but that's got to be tiring also.
It's exhausting. It is.
That's it.
The tangent exhausting that I would take is, I remember 20, 25 years ago, you would be introduced to a new project engineer for a general contractor, and being in the specialty trades, that's who we dealt with, right? Mm-hmm. We interact with PEs, not PMs. And it's because we're not important until we are, right? We know our place on the totem pole. It's fine. And we would get so angry, myself personally, but our company would get so angry with recent graduates who really don't understand the industry, right? They have a degree, they understand the theory, but they don't have practical experience yet. And it would be exhausting. And finally, we just had a paradigm shift that PEs become PMs, right? Mm-hmm. And we started taking time to, I wouldn't use the word train, but to coach them through what we do and what the process really looks like, right? That one ASTM number in the spec that is 15 years old is actually out of date because the architects use canned specs. And I know you don't understand that, and you're doing your job. You're doing it exactly as you were told to do it. But let me take a minute and explain why this spec is irrelevant, and let's let it go. I don't need to resubmit. Right? I don't need to spend the time there. And then let's talk about the schedule. Let's talk about what ready looks like and what ready means. Because I think even today we're spending too much time scheduling projects based on what's on a paper schedule or what's on a computer screen rather than what we see with our eyes, which is a job that's not ready.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time with our clients not just saying what ready looks like, but why it's important that we have all of those boxes checked before we mobilize. And it's because we get in and out. We are damn good at what we do as a company. And when we can be efficient, we blow people's minds. We have an enormous crew when we need to, right? When a job is truly behind and we have to come together, GC and us, and we show up on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday to knock something out, we kill it. We can do it. But on the flip side, I'm not going to go into a hospital project and I'm not going to put half of the items in every room in that floor because the owner didn't provide what they needed to provide on time and they just want us to come back and do it. Go back into every room again. We're going to say no.
Right. Well, and you're saving the money at the end of the day, right? Because you're probably going to go ahead and back charge them essentially, with double handling and remobilizing. And there's all these costs that are associated with, you gave me a schedule and you told me, these items need to happen on these dates. And that's how I estimated it. That's how I built my manpower schedule. That's how, all of these things came into place. And now you're telling me you want me to basically take those line items and now cut them in half, come and do half of it and then come back and do the other half. Well, that's going to change the cost, and I think that's something that, and I'm no fault to their own, but owners and a lot of general contractors, especially young PEs, don't understand, right? They don't understand that when we estimate a project, we're estimating a project to what it takes based off of the information we're given. We're not accounting for all these X, Y, and Z. Well, what if we have to do this? What if we have to do that? Because if we did that, we would bid ourselves out of our project, right? Which will go into our next topic about low bid, high expectations, but that's kind of, what happens. And so I agree. I think it's educating and trying to relay that information that, hey, we're trying to actually save you guys money. This is something that we can get in here. You can get us all these rooms ready. We can come in and just knock them out. But it might look scary for a while because all these rooms are blank and there's nothing in them. But we promise that within the couple of, weeks that we're given, we'll knock it out. So it's having that. I don't know how we educate other than just telling and teaching and recoaching them every time, I guess. But
I was going to say, like, have you seen benefits? You were talking about, use the PEs because they're moving up. Some of those PEs could be moving into the field too from the GC side. I know different companies have different routes. Have you seen those benefits over your years of like, that PE, that was a PE I helped, and now they're a PM or a super, and they're a part of my team now when I'm out on a site. They understand what I'm looking for. Have you seen that benefit?
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah. It's one of the benefits of being in the industry this long, to see people progress in their own careers. Yeah, we're relationship based for sure. We're a sales organization. We're departmentalized like GCs are, which is uncommon for a specialties company. But we really do value personal relationships, and we think it's the key to success on projects when you can call a person and say, hey, we have a problem. We need to talk through it, rather than heading into it in an adversarial manner, which unfortunately is too frequently in construction.
What would you want with something like it to help with the schedules and what's happening in the industry? What would you want to help change that? Like, in regards to, I'm always getting pushed at the end. Like, how would you rather come in and do it if you could fix it overnight? Which that's, we know that's not going to happen. But if you could, what's your ideas?
Pipe dreams.
Yeah, pipe dreams. That's a good one.
So in my company, there's a term called Jack Easy, because I just speak things. And
I was about to say, you have a lot of Jack.
Sounds so easy, right? I think accountability is the key. Like I said earlier, the memories are short when we get to the end of the project. I think the trades need to be held accountable for the delays that they cause. And I think GCs should be accountable for being overly ambitious on schedules when it's apparent that it was never realistic to begin with, and have an honest conversation about what it means to reset the schedule. What does it really look like? If there's money in it to accelerate and to pay overtime, then let's have that conversation. But often, and again, the last 5 to 10 years, we've had a manpower shortage that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's only so much overtime that helps, right? You can't work overtime
same person
12, 14 weeks in a row. It's just not sustainable. So I don't even want the overtime, right? I want a managed schedule that we can forecast and then strive to meet. We're really good at that as a company. We pivot well because we have to. But man, the amount of manpower waste we have from mobilizations that aren't ready and return trips and unforeseen hurdles on job sites, it's unbelievable, the amount of productivity we lose.
Right, just that manpower and then having to probably prove it.
Yeah, I think, realization that, you ask for a solution. When I say we need to discuss the schedule and reset it, it's really having an honest conversation about what it takes to get a particular trade or scope done. And doubling the men doesn't shorten the time by half.
Thank you.
Right?
Yep.
It doesn't work that way.
Correct.
Even if I had the men or women to throw at the install, it doesn't speed it up. It's not linear. And so what is critical, right? What is critical to opening? What's critical to inspections, if that's the case? Or what's a realistic postponement of owner move-in? Right. Let's have that conversation. And I understand there's cost associated with all of that. There's financing costs. There's, the owner's use of the building. There's return on investment. All of that matters. And we're still delivering buildings late and incomplete, and it's highly stressful. And I think that's what's unnecessary.
But I think it's all reactive, because the problem is that I've said this in multiple podcasts, and I'm very passionate about this. Why are we even putting together schedules that are unrealistic to begin with? Why are, the first time that the subcontractors that are agreeing to this schedule for the first time looking at this when they're on the project, right? Like, why is this not why is there not historical data that they can pull from? Like, how are they getting their durations, and how are they getting all of this? They probably are pulling it from a historical database that is probably outdated, not realistic to begin with, and their schedule's based off of all those durations, and now we're having to somehow meet them. I mean, I think it's educating from the top down. It's educating the owner that your opening of your hospital by the end of 2024, and you're just now wanting us to bid it, is not realistic. It's just not realistic. You're not going to have quality. You're not going to have safety. There's going to be so many issues on the project. Like, how do we educate, and how do we empower the general contractors to educate? Because they know. They look at a schedule. They can look at a schedule, and they've been in the industry for so long. There's massive general contractors that are like very educated with this, and they know the last 4 projects, the same size with the same schedule, all ran over. Like, it's probably easy for them to tell, but why are they agreeing to it still? Because it's, in order for them to get the project, they have to.
Well, I think it's 2 things. Yes, they're telling the owner what they want to hear. But I also think it's well-intentioned people coming together, whether, IPD, pole planning, whatever model you want to talk about. We've been involved in those, and they're well-intentioned. And in my experience, the first trade that falls down on that schedule impacts everyone else downstream, right? As soon as the structural steel is 3 weeks late, everything slides, and there's not an appetite to adjust that schedule right away. And I can appreciate that, right? The GC's saying, hey, we have 9 months. We can make up 3 weeks somewhere. It's a good attitude, but if we're not having the realistic milestone reviews along the way, and that finish date doesn't change, then the only solution is for every subsequent subs to their window of opportunity to compress.
We were just talking about this the other day, actually, about how, like, the last planner system, in order for it to work, the general contractor has to hold themselves and their subcontractors accountable for all the milestones that are put in place. Because at the end of the day, if like that kind of approach, if it's a subcontractor doing it, I mean, they're definitely having to, they're putting in all of their eggs in one basket, right? They're saying, like, yes, I'm committing to these dates, and now they're actually going to have to commit to these dates. So that's an easier way for the general contractor to now, like, hold the subs accountable, and vice versa. The subs to hold each other accountable. So I think with just these, like, base schedules that just get sent out that are thrown together. I mean, I've worked for a general contractor, and not that this is what they did, but I've just experienced seeing how they do schedules, and there's not any input from the subcontractors. And, being on the subcontractor side now, that's the first thing I look at now when I get a schedule. And I look at it, and I look at the durations more than I look at the dates of the install, because I feel like that's what really causes the issues. It's more so getting the job done.
Better pay attention to it as the schedule pushes too, because then you're going to get some trade stacking. So I gotta look at some of those dates also, because I know that was a big thing for me on that side, was just because the date, the duration stays the same doesn't mean that you now didn't get put on 5 floors when you were originally only on 2, because that's some of the stuff that happens. And I don't know, I'm just wrote down, I feel like we could have like a scheduler, and we talk to them specifically. How do you do this? Like, what is the conversation about that? Because I think there is some going into that low bid, high expectations. Is we are expected from, like, sub side, we are expected to do that. From the GC side, maybe they are also expected to do that. Is it just such industry norm at this point that, I mean, we all want the job, right? If it's a job you want, you're going to try and get it. And have we just gotten to a point as an industry that we're just fighting to that lowest number so we can say, yay, we got it, and then we'll deal with all the stress and deal with all the issues when they come out on site? I mean, that's the worst time to have to be dealing with it. Not the best time is dealing with it way in the front, not when we're on site. And I think that's a lot of the things that we do now. It's just hurry up, get the job on both sides, and then figure it out. Figure it out when you're there. Oh, you guys are finished trade? Here's the schedule. Figure it out.
Yeah, I think to your point, the schedules, again, we're a specialties subcontractor, 10, 11, and 12, divisions 10, 11, and 12. Far too often, we're not even on the schedule, or it is lumped into finishes.
Yes.
Right? It's one task called finishes.
Yeah.
And so we have to look for drywall, paint, flooring, right? Because we know we follow plumbing trim out. We have to follow those trades. And if there are any GCs listening, I would implore you to take the time to break out the trades, at least the subs. You don't have to break out every scope, but acknowledge that the subs are going to be in and out of your job multiple times and plug it into your schedule so that we're not surprised, right? We as a team are not surprised that there's 4 or 5 trades that need to get into the same area and they are stacked.
Mm-hmm. Or it's, well, it wasn't on the schedule. Well, you knew it was on the drawing, so you know you're going to have to do it. Just because it wasn't on the schedule doesn't mean like you don't own it. It's like, yeah, but I didn't know when I was going to do it because you don't really have it broken out. Because I feel like that's an easy game that can be played. It's like, well, it was in the drawings. Just because it wasn't on the schedule doesn't mean like you can try and get money for it. It's like, well, it's 6 months past when it should have been done then. Let's have that conversation. I think there's little like games that get played.
Sure.
The schedules aren't fully put together early on, so you're missing back end things. And then slowly over the months it gets filled out. So now you figure out when you're really going to start, right?
Yeah.
And that can be, I mean, for you guys, that could be so frustrating.
Yeah. In the general contractor's defense too, we could also, I feel like, as the trade partners, kind of help them. And I think you guys probably do this. I feel like a lot of finished trades do this kind of stuff, but I feel like it doesn't really, I don't know how much the rest of the trades do, but putting together like a manpower type of schedule when you get the schedule and sending it to your general contractor and saying, hey, here's, based off your dates, I'm going to be choppy. Like I'm going to be mowing and demobbing, and there's going to be no productivity, no flow. Here's what I suggest, right? Like that kind of a conversation at the very, very beginning of the project, when you get the project, I think is so critical, because the general contractor has so many different things on their mind, and they're focused on the 5 subs that they've got at the very beginning of the project, right? So like they're not focused on you at the end of the project until you they have to be. But us as the trade partner can also kind of help them out in the sense of saying, hey, we understand you guys want us here and we're not on the schedule, so here's typically how we follow the previous trades. We typically go before this other trade. So here's our window of when we should install, and here's how our manpower flow would be, and selling it to them in that way. I mean, because I agree. I think it should be broken out more, but I would say probably a lot of other trades feel the same way too, is, their scopes are, but then you would have a massive schedule to be scrolling through.
Yeah, that's also coming down to you prioritize what's in there. But I think some trades are required to provide that type of a detailed schedule because they want that information. And I don't know about other trades, but I know I have done that in the past. Yeah. And it is beneficial to be like, let's really look at our trade stacking and flow. That would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, and I think my suggestion to other smaller subs would be to truly be a partner with the GC and offer the information that they need to be successful. So if we're not on the schedule, to your point, here's how many mobs we have, here's the manpower, here's our take on the schedule and how we can be most efficient, and here's the trade we would follow. Please add us to your schedule. That's a literal request that we make. It doesn't always end up on the schedule, but we ask.
Even if it's just one line item, right?
and having the subsequent conversations with the GCs. We do a lot of hotels where they want a floor a week, which is great. It is a good rhythm, but our scope may be 2.5 to 3 days. And for us to mob to the job every week for 2.5 or 3 days is not terribly efficient, right? We understand that's the schedule, but hey, can we come late on the first floor, hit the second one on time, and hit the third one early so we can be there 2 weeks straight, right? Instead of 9 days over 3 weeks, we'll be there 9 days over 2 weeks. And sometimes they're open to that and they understand, and other times they will say, no, we got final clean right behind you. Well, okay, can you hold off final clean? Because we can't guarantee we get the same crew back every week on this cadence. And when we have new people come into the job, there's that learning curve. There's the nuances, right? You're going to be frustrated if things get lost in communication. We own it, but it still happens. So can we work together to make this a success? Our efficiency is your win.
Well, not only that, but I mean, there's trades that follow you that are going to have the same issue, right? If you're stop and go,
Yeah.
so are they. It's like traffic, right? If you're on the highway and you have, you have the person behind you constantly speeding up, and then they're having to slam on their brakes, and that's basically what you're doing, is you're speeding up, slowing down, like
Somebody's about to get rear-ended.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's like having that analogy of just like, if everyone went the same speed limit and the person behind went a little slower, you know what I mean? Like, it would build that, like, the flow that they're needing. And yeah, I think, I don't know if it's building the schedule or just having the education on it, but I agree. I think if you can just get a bunch of rooms ready, and then we'll come in and we'll get it done, but it doesn't have to be right after the sub in front of us,
I think there's some aspects of planning in silos of every trade has now sent me what they want, and they've done it over the last year, right? When they get it. And it's like, so they plan for that trade. Okay. And then the next trade. Okay. Now we're planning with this trade. And so it's like a silo effect. So they're working in what's best for these couple of trades that are maybe like heavily working together right now. And so what works for them doesn't always work for the next major group of trades coming in if we're looking at finishes. And so then it's like, well, now we have to readjust like our flow that we've been doing for the last 6 months because you want a different flow. And it's like, well, if we would have talked about that earlier and we would have realized that, maybe we could have like made adjustments. And I think that's my personal opinion, is like there's planning in silos of small trade groups in lieu of looking at the project as a whole and making slight adjustments as you go through.
Yeah.
I think another mindset that GCs could take is that finished contractors are start, stop. It's normal, right? That's how we operate. We're not like electricians, mechanical contractors, even, mid-sized jobs where framers are drywallers and also painters. So they're there for the duration of the job. It's easier for an electrical contractor to bounce and do rough-ins in this wing and then come over and trim out over here because that's the progress. We can't bounce like that and be efficient. We just can't. It's not how we bid the job. It's not how we're going to be competitive on bid day. So schedules do matter.
Yes, agreed.
Competitive on bid day is kind of where, we hit on it a couple of times, but being competitive on bid day is a whole other, schedule's one thing, but how you're getting these projects. I think that's what we've hit on, the low bid, high expectations conversation already. But how does that go with you, Jack?
I'll say we're a sales organization. My CEO is former pre-construction manager, very sales focused. We do not subscribe to the 3-bid, low bid mentality. We understand where there's public projects, public money, that can be the reality. Honestly, if any competitors are listening, we tend to shy away from those jobs anyway, because we're not going to be low on bid day. We have conversations and relationships with our customers, and we explain to them why we're not going to be low on bid day. And we believe we add value to the project as a sub. And when the project is done, that they will experience that value add from us. I'm someone who believes there's a total cost of doing business with a company, and it's not just the dollars that exchange hands.
Agree.
I am someone who in my personal life and in my company will pay a little more for service and quality, and to maintain a relationship. We do not shop our vendors post-bid. We live and die with them. We are loyal to our primary vendors day in and day out. I firmly believe that that's how you do business. We have to have backup vendors, right? We spread the love because you have to, but we have our primary vendors and they know who they are. And we think it's a better relationship because when we get into a bind, when there's a schedule issue or a delay or we drop the ball and we need a favor, we know we're going to get that, right? And so what I try to walk the talk, and that's what we sell to our clients. We're going to be 3 to 5% high on bid day. Again, if competitors are listening, there you go. But it's because we've departmentalized. We have a full pre-construction team that works with our GC's pre-construction team. We hand it off to a project management team that have PEs. We have a full foreman team that manages our field staff, right? We have, everything's relative, but we have a very large installer team compared to our competitors. And all of that costs money. We have a 44,000 square foot warehouse. That costs money. We have a delivery crew with a big truck, right? Big flatbed truck, so that we're not impacting productivity on install day. We have dedicated crews to move material. Right? This is secondhand for bigger trades, but not trades that are our size. And all of that costs extra, right? Our proposals are detailed. That takes a lot of time and energy. Our submittals get compliments all the time about how well organized they are and how detailed they are, how thorough they are. That costs money, right? PEs cost money, which is not normal in our industry, in our slice of the industry. And so that's the message. That's up to us to sell that value and then, of course, deliver on it on the job and prove it out. But we've been in business 38 years and we don't stay in business because we do a poor job.
I was going to ask that from day one, it hasn't been, you started out and it's like, okay, we're going to get low bid because we just need jobs. It has been a part of just how you guys do business for 30 years, plus years.
It is. And I don't say that to be cocky, right? A good sales process includes qualifying opportunities.
Right.
It's not just the GC. The owners change. The people within the GC change. The project type changes, right? Owners, developers. We can usually see what's going to be a good project for us. And we say no to more than half the opportunities that we're presented with. And we still pretty busy, right? Yeah. We're pretty good at identifying jobs that are good fits for us. Right. I'm not going to say we don't take jobs to keep the lights on. We certainly fill the hopper with a certain amount of work. But being a finished trade, we have a long runway to see work coming at us. And so we can be a little more selective. We're not retail where today matters. It's what's going to hit in 6 to 12 months. Yeah. Right. And so, I don't know, I just am really proud of what we do as a company. And it's not a sales effort right now, right, to try to convince people we're worth doing business with. It's that relationship building. We'll tell a client, this is not a good fit for us, and here's why. Yeah. Right. I would refer you to company A, B, or C, right? They would be a good fit for you. But we have to pass on this one. Yeah.
So why other than the fact that you guys aren't competitive necessarily during a low bid situation, but what other reasons do you guys shy away from it? I mean, do you feel like low bid kind of equates to like poor safety? Do you think it equates to more like poor like product at the end of the day? Like what other reasons?
There's just so many variables that go into that. We unfortunately, my slice of the industry, you can have Chuck in a truck competing, right? Their proposal looks exactly like ours on bid day. It's a piece of paper with a logo and a dollar amount. Yeah. Right. And somebody who doesn't know us, low bid's going to win. Right. That's on us, right? We need to develop that relationship ahead of bid day, right? We need to be talking about the project. So if it's not our resources and our abilities, then it comes down to product, right? Specs can be interpreted if we're honest. And we really spend a lot of time digesting specs because back to the previous segment, we don't get acknowledged prior to bid day, right? Yeah. If we have questions, there's far more important things that GCs and architects are going to respond to. And so we have to make a lot of assumptions, and we will tend to err on the more costly side and qualify it. And even those qualifications don't get read. And so it's really about a post-bid meeting, a buyout or a follow-up call where we explain what we did, why we did it, and potentially where some value engineering is. But that's going to make us high. We're always going to err on the more costly side and explain it away.
Do you think low bid benefits the industry?
I think when you have well-qualified subs and there's a pretty clear spec or a range of the spec that is competitive, then low bid is fine. Why? Apples to apples, if it's possible, why would you pay more? Right? That makes total sense. But it's very, very rare that two competitors are truly apples to apples. Yeah. There is something that is unique, and there's a value judgment that's on the part of the owner, architect, or GC, and that's our job to sell that value.
Well, I feel like a lot of the time, too, with the low bid situation, you have a general contractors that are bidding against each other. They're getting budget numbers, right, from their subcontractors if they can. There's some trades or some scopes of work they can't get budget numbers for because they only have a certain amount of time to get the their bid in. And so they're throwing historical data with, putting a bid in and for scopes of work. And then they actually get the project and realize, oh crap, like they get all their numbers back from that sub for that scope of work. And they're way out of budget. Right. And then now they're, asking in trying to figure out ways for the subcontractor to help them out. And it's almost like not fair. I feel like low bid can kind of creates tension between the subcontractor and the general contractor to begin with, like at the beginning of the project, because, you're now getting beat up over your price because they didn't bid their project accordingly, which isn't their fault. It's because the deadline, going back to deadlines, was so short that they couldn't bid the project accordingly because they couldn't get a subcontractor's number. So, I mean, I think going back to the whole low bid, is it good for the industry or is it okay for the industry? I feel like for the most part, no, because like you were saying, most trades or most subcontractors and most GCs are apples to bananas. And, there's a lot of good quality contractors out there, but they're going to interpret things way differently. And you're going to get way different pricing, and they're going to figure out ways to, I'll bid this thing, and then when it comes back, I'll just change order it because, it wasn't clear. And so they think that they're going to just get back up to where the number they actually want to be with change orders. And it's, at the end of the day, the owner is going to pay way more money.
I have to say, at this point, my opinion, change orders aren't making you that much money that you're going to, pick up a massive...
Agreed.
Depending on what it is. I mean, I would say there's another aspect of, and I don't know, Jack, you would have to tell me if you experienced this, where you've shown that opportunity. Maybe it's a newer client that you're trying to get in with, and you've shown them, hey, look at all the work we do to really bid and really understand the job. And then they don't give you the job and say, well, you just did too good of a job, basically. So now we know all the holes, and the low bid, we're going to go screw the low bid guy. And you don't get the job. And I'm saying with a client that maybe you don't really know yet. And I'm saying that because I've seen that happen.
Yeah, that kind of client we won't work with.
Yeah, anymore. Yeah.
And we'll have the conversation. Like we don't just shrink away from it. Because we would like to be able to convert that client to see the value and build that relationship. But if that's truly how they're wired, then they're not a good fit for us.
Yeah.
When you mentioned change orders, I despise change orders. I'm old enough. I remember the picture hanging in the job trailers with the yacht and the dinghy, yes. Right? Mm-hmm. The dinghy was named contract and the yacht was change order because that's where the money was. Those days are gone.
I would say that doesn't happen.
Change orders, they're exhausting also, right? 5 and 10 OH&P, I don't want it, right? If I had nothing better to do, honestly, I would challenge the requirement that we would have to do change order work because I don't bid a job at 5 and 10. I can't stay in business. My overhead is far higher than that percentage, right? And I spend a lot of time educating GCs at the front end. Like we were pissing contractors off at the contract review stage because we wouldn't agree to that term. And we would get on the phone and we would explain it. We would share our financial. Like, you pre-qualify us. You see our overhead rate. How can you expect us to take a change order at 10%? It's a losing proposition for us. Well, that's what's in our prime contract. Well, okay, I'm sorry you signed the prime contract, but I work for you, and here's what we have, right? And it's a tangent here, but we've been told by more than one large contractor in this market to just cheat. Just fabricate the numbers, get what you need, and just back into it, which, first of all, I don't want to do. It's not how we're wired as a company. And secondly, I don't have the time, right? I don't have the time or the energy to fabricate numbers.
I mean, that's
where are you going to put it? Like
on a $600 change order.
Right. It's like everything is backup now, which I don't really blame some of these owners that are like, I want backup for quotes, because they probably have been burned in the past. They probably, they were naive in the beginning of their careers, and now they're realizing that, change orders, especially, people are trying to make money on them. And so, now they're asking for all this backup, and now there's really no way to make money on change orders anyway. Yeah. And to your point, I feel like there's been probably a lot of trades that have this situation happen where you end up, your contract is, a 6-figure number, and your change order ends up being over $1 million. And it's like, right, like my overhead can't cover my overhead. Mm-hmm.
And then you're throwing in extended general conditions as a separate change order, which is then a whole other conversation.
But you can't even do that.
I was just throwing out there's all the other things. I mean, even just when you just said that, like, oh, you were told to cheat it. I mean, that's how I was taught, 18, 17 years ago. It's like you put a little extra in your change orders, that's to help. And then, you're going to get negotiated. Someone's going to come in. I mean, the effort just to sit down and review every single change order and prove it. Prove $600.
Well, you don't even get paid for most of them anyway.
Prove $100,000. I mean, I understand proving $100,000. Yeah. But I mean, even just proving $1,200 or $1,500, it's the amount of effort it takes. It's like, oh my gosh, like at this point, I've spent more time talking about it than it cost me this. So, then you want to just give up. But then at the same point, you're like, no, I need that damn money. I need the money. And it's so tiring. I mean, I completely would agree with you on that, Jack. Like, that's, to me, it's like, please just stop. Like, let's just stop those. But I mean, I know it's not going to happen, but it's just the amount of work, or even just you bid it at X square feet a day. Why are you charging me in a change order half that? I'm like, because you get change order price now because of what the job looks like out there.
Not even
I bid it. We were a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Now there's 5 other people in that room, and I got to bid it, change order it a different way. And it's like getting people, and it's usually younger PEs that are new to the industry, to understand like why the numbers are different. And it's just, that is one of my things. It's so tiring. Yeah. I'm tired of dealing with it.
Yeah, my favorite is unit prices on bid day.
Oh, God. Okay. Mm-hmm. No.
Because then they want to put them in the contract,
I'm preaching to the choir, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to buy a case of Costco toilet paper at the beginning of the job, but you want one roll at the end from 7-Eleven. It's not the same price. It's not.
I do like all the Jackisms.
Yeah.
that we have in here today.
Well, I was going to say, to kind of bounce off that, it's also, if I'm, especially because we're the finish, we work in the finishing side of things, right? So when we bid, typically on bid day, or the budgets we give them is at the very beginning of the project when they're bidding the project, right? And then when you go to actually bid the project itself and they've signed you up, they're like, well, your budget number you gave us is way lower than the cost now. That was 2 years ago. Of course, escalation, like on material, or we realized X, Y, and Z, or whatever. And then the same thing goes to when they ask for a credit, and you give them a credit for, for something that was in your original base bid, and it doesn't match an ad for the same thing. Mm-hmm. You're eating today's dollars. Like, it's just, but
it's well-intentioned.
It is very well-intentioned.
The rationale, but the math doesn't math.
No.
It doesn't, and it's another stressor. It comes down to time, right? The time it takes to generate and support a change order. again, I despise them. Can we just have a better set of plans and specs to start?
Right.
And
spend more time on that.
Can we just build the building? Please.
I mean, have a really nice set of drawings, forget all the rest of the paper, and have specs that are like actual specs for the job instead of just copy paste. Let's just go.
We do have a friend that will be on the next podcast, and she's an interior designer, and I know she's very stressed out. A lot of things have changed. I feel like it just in general, construction has just compressed. Like the design schedule has compressed, for architects to actually design anything. And that's why we get these drawings that are half baked. Like I feel like just so much stuff is compressed, and it's like, why? Like, what is causing all the compression? Like,
There's a whole other podcast for you.
I was about to say, like, do we have answers? We need an owner, we need a GC, we need a trade partner, and let's all sit down and start talking, because I feel like that's like a panel discussion, because that's like that's not one thing we can discuss here.
Everybody bids man hours, and when the hours are running late, the work starts to drop off. Right, the design hours, when they get consumed, the design starts to suffer.
Yeah.
That's what we experience.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. You don't really think of it even from the design side, hours for them, right? It's just because I'm not in that, so I don't really think of it that way, but that's a really good way. It's like, their hours are running out. Hey, we're running out. Well, this is good enough for here, or even coming out the site and checking on things, answering RFIs, right? Like they get to a point where like, oh my God, you're sending more RFIs, but I don't have the time to do this for multiple ways. I'm on other projects and I don't have the money to do it.
Domino effect from the very beginning. Yeah.
Yes, that is a whole other.
We'll have another conversation on that one. So when you say low bid, high expectation, what portion of the high expectation are you talking about?
Performance.
Okay.
What I've seen over the years is the pendulum swings. We see bigger generals. I think the bigger the contractor, the worse, right? As you get to nationwide GCs, the worse the situation is. It's almost adversarial before you start, right? As a subcontractor, we're a necessary evil. They need to buy what we provide from somebody. It's us or someone else, right? They have to have us. It's not that they want to have us. And that's where we, as a sales organization, really focus. Here's our performance. Here's how we've done over the last 38 years and these projects for you previously. It's why we're worth a little bit more. But what we see is punitive clauses and punitive behaviors start to creep into the jobs, which really cost money. There is a large nationwide contractor that is very proud of their punch list program. And we've gotten to a point where we either won't bid the project and we will tell them that's why.
Yeah.
Or there's a separate line item that is 5 figures, which is a big number for our scopes to take that job with that program, because it is so onerous and time consuming and generally ineffective. And I am the guy who will say what needs to be said. It's ineffective. It's well-intentioned, but it's ineffective. And it becomes punitive, right? We had a job in Greeley with this contractor where we had racked up $80,000 of $25 fines.
Holy.
And it took getting the local, I don't remember the title, but it was the local branch president in my office to talk about this. Because we had to take time and document that the areas weren't even ready for punch, let alone this process, which began to get documented. And every item in every room accrued $25 a day. The clock never should have started, right? It was an absurd process. It was early in this process for the company. But I got to the point where I'm pulling off the job and I'm taking my materials with me, and you can figure it out on your own, because I'm not going to spend the time building a case against you when I could be spending the time getting your job done.
Yeah.
I want to be productive and get the job done, not go take photos of why you're not ready and why you can't charge me these fines, right? It's stuff like that. It's withholding not only retainage, but we're going to withhold another 5% for closeout docs, and we're going to withhold another 5% to get your punch list, which is what retainage is for. But we're going to hold more than that to make sure you get your punch list done, get your closeouts done, make sure you have a clean job site, right? And my answer to that...
There was a bill that passed that said 5%, period.
Yes, but this has happened in the not too distant future. I think even now it's happening. There are holdbacks for these deliverables at the end of the job, and we won't do it. We won't take the job. And my response is, if you have to threaten your subs to perform in the right way, right? That's not unique. To do your punch list and to get your closeouts on time, that's not special. If you have to beat up your subs to do that, then you have the wrong subs. And we're not that sub, and we're not going to have you withhold that much money till the end of the job.
Right.
There's not enough cash flow. Like, let me give you a quick accounting lesson on how cash flow works, because the math doesn't math when you withhold 20% of the job till the end.
Right.
And so this is that relationship building that I keep going back to. And it's not so much the low bid, but the high expectations. Those are fine. Just be willing to pay for it.
Right.
Right. Performance.
And hold everyone accountable to it. Not just certain trades or certain people, holding everyone on the team accountable to it.
Yeah. And I don't want to mislead anyone that we're perfect. We are far from perfect. But I will tell you, we own our shit.
Yeah.
Right. If we make a mistake, we're going to own it. We're going to be the first to admit it, and we're going to fix it. But I just don't see the same level of accountability across the industry.
Right.
You know, when you talk about low bid, high expectations, the old adage, you can have fast, good, or cheap, right? Pick any two.
Yeah, it's very true.
That's something that I talk about internally, and it's, can you provide all three? And it's usually no, but if you understand who your client is and we understand each other, low or cheap may not be cheap when we think of cheap. It's cheap for you as a trade partner. This is what I can, based on what you're telling me, Mr. Client, here's what I can provide. And it's not the cheapest thing, but it's what it is. And so we agree on what cheap means. And I don't want to say it like as a bad word. I'm saying it as like the price should be determined by the group. And so low price doesn't always need to be bad. It could be low price for what we have agreed upon, for the conditions of the project, for the material, for the labor, whatever it is. And I think that's something that you have to look at all of that. And it changes from client to client, and relationships are a big deal to making sure everybody understands what each of those mean to each other.
Yeah.
You know, there are general contractors and mindsets, on bid day, we will propose sometimes 10 or 15 individual scopes, standalone scopes that can be awarded individually. And there are GCs who will award those a la carte, right? They'll get 7 different subs on board for 15 scopes because the total dollars is less. And they can't look far ahead enough to realize they have to manage 7 subs. Yes. They have to have 7 people in the room. They got to process 7 pay apps every month. They have lien waivers every month. There's a total cost of doing business with a company. And when you're multiplying all those companies out, those savings on bid day didn't matter, right? That 5% savings on 1% of the building budget is negligible compared to what the administrative cost is to that GC. And we hear it from supers, right?
They probably do.
Pre-con or PMs did the buyout, and they're the ones handed the contracts, and they're like, what did they do?
Yeah. Well, and usually those scopes touch each other. So now you're having to you know, it's things have to match, and you're like coordinating all of that, and it's nightmare. Well, thanks, Jack. This has been a great conversation. I love the fact that you're so passionate about wanting to talk about these problems and stuff, because this is the kind of stuff that needs to be said. And especially coming from a place of, leadership and experience, and you've been in the industry for a long time, and you are an owner of a company, and you've seen it all, right? Like you've been there, and you work with a lot of contractors. And I mean, your experience and also your just your viewpoint is just so invaluable. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Again, I really like what you two are doing.
Thank you.
Wish you all the success. I've listened to every episode.
Have we improved?
Yes, you have. Yeah.
A little bit.